Futurise Sdn Berhad, Madam Idawati M. Olaybal, Senior Director of the Pre-Market Control Division, Medical Devices Authority, Mr. Yan Tiedemann, Finance Director, Siemens Healthineers, Malaysia. Esteemed panelists, partners, distinguished guests and members of the media. The dedicated team from Futurise, MDA and our venue sponsor, Siemens Healthineers, welcome you to today's RegTalk about AI medical devices in Malaysia, balancing innovation and safety. My name is Elia from Futurise and I will be your MC for today's insightful RegTalk. Before we begin, I would like to go through a few quick housekeeping notes to ensure a smooth experience for everyone during this event. Please avoid entering the internal office as they are restricted areas. Always keep the tags provided on for identification. Set your mobile phones to silent and please do not use camera during the event. No food is allowed in the venue. Drinks are allowed, but please be mindful when bringing them in. Refreshments are available at the work cafe. Feel free to access them anytime. Locals are available if you need to store personal items. The surau is located on the lower ground floor, and for any help, please reach out to the organizers from Futurise or Siemens Healthineers. Ladies and gentlemen, a brief on what this RegTalk is about. This RegTalk intends to explore how Malaysia's regulatory framework can evolve alongside the rapid advancement of medical device technologies, particularly those powered by artificial intelligence. We'll be hearing insights on the opportunities AI presents for improving healthcare outcomes, as well as the regulatory challenges we must navigate to ensure safety, compliance, and innovation go hand in hand. This session is a collaborative effort between Futurise and the Medical Device Authority, MDA. It is a timely discussion that aligns with our shared goal of strengthening Malaysia's medical device ecosystem through forward-thinking regulation. To officially kick off our event, please join me in welcoming the Acting CEO of Futurise, Madam Shafina Salim, to deliver her opening speech. Madam Shafina, the floor is yours.
Very good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang berusaha Puan Idawati M. Olaybal, Senior Director Pre-Market Control Division, Medical Devices Authority, MDA. Yang berusaha Puan Idamazura, binti Idris Harun, Senior Director of Policy and Strategy Planning Division of Medical Devices Authority. Mr. Yan Tiedemann, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Finance Director for Siemens Healthineers. Thank you very much, sir, for hosting this together with us, Futurise, for this significant event. Yang berusaha Dr. Chung Yiu-Cho, Head Research Collaborations, Siemens Healthineers. Yang berusaha Mr. Deepak Pillai, Head of Technology, Media, Telecommunications and Data Protection, physically and all. And yang berusaha Elia, Al-Hakim from the Associate of Asian Group Advisors. Thank you very much for sparing your time to be in this side of town, especially for us, Futurise and MDA. You know, we drove all the way from Cyberjaya to be here, nonetheless, for such a significant and important event. It's not just an event, it's the much needed platform for us to get the latest insights, to have these conversations, as you can see today, with the topic earlier on, you see on the board, balancing innovation and safety in AI medical devices. So truly, I'm very honored to be here today. Some of you may not be the first time seeing me helming Futurise. I just started early this year in February. There will be a lot more exciting projects that are coming from Futurise. We talk about regulatory sandbox and the frameworks as far as the emerging technologies and innovations are happening out there and impacting our economies across sector, and healthcare, as known for the highly regulated industry, definitely is something that we need to have conversations among the industries, the regulators, the government, industry players, and many more. and even research institutions. So I would like again to extend my gratitude for our collaboration partner, Medical Device Authority, where we started to meet up, I think about 2 months ago, for co-organizing this important dialogue, which is timely and urgently, that especially when every day in prime time news, newspaper, and online news, that we are seeing artificial intelligence are being spoken in the mainstream and online media. And we hope, and what we see, that definitely that artificial intelligence will continue to shape the future of healthcare, and we are reminded the importance of developing not only just the cutting technologies, more so, as I mentioned earlier, the regulatory and ethical foundations that ensure the innovations are not just accessible, but also safe and effective for all Malaysians and public at large. Right? For those of you that maybe first time or not so familiar about Futurise, we are the government company under the Ministry of Finance, and we've been mandated by the government to lead and drive the National Regulatory Sandbox, and whereby the sandbox, the National Regulatory Sandbox, is made essentially to facilitate the collaboration between government and industries, to develop a progressive regulatory framework for the future economy. A lot of uncertain areas that are in affecting various economies that work for intersection of public policy, regulation, and also, most importantly, the industry growth. So our focus is on creative sandbox environments that allow industries to test and innovate, validate, and within a safe and controlled regulatory ecosystem, with the ultimate aim to support the development of the future economies throughout our agile regulatory frameworks, especially for the industries of tomorrow that are rapidly evolved, even as we speak right now. So in the past few years, for Futurise, we have been very instrumental with our developing the National Regulatory Sandbox. Among those that you can see what's now known as an industry standing on its own would be the likes of the drone technology. I would say that 5 years ago, you hardly see drone is expensive to accessible, not flying a bit easily. But now, rather than just being hobbies, they are taken seriously, developing an industry of its own. And that will translate more into other areas like advanced air mobility. You're seeing self-driving car, or what we call autonomous vehicles, not just a car, maybe a bus or any other vehicles on the road, maybe even taking passenger very soon here in Malaysia. Online healthcare services, and all this will not happen without the intervention through our National Regulatory Sandbox. So through these initiatives, we have facilitated the groundbreaking by helping companies, especially the technology companies, to navigate together with the regulators on the complex regulatory landscape while ensuring the safety, compliance, and accountability. So today we are continuing to drive the momentum for Futurise is currently engaged in various projects. To name a few upcoming ones, and we also follow the mainstream news, the government was talking about the importance of the personal data protection. So we're working closely with the Ministry of Digital. We're developing a comprehensive guidelines to enhance Malaysia's data protection landscape, and essential, especially with the involvement of AI. And on top of that, we are also expanding our regulatory sandbox to include emerging technologies like the cloud computing. Watch out for next week news as well. Quantum technologies, renewable energy, and many more. So which of these are involving the critical phase for Malaysia's industrial journey. So we are definitely our country in a pivotal point in our digital health journey. So with the convergence of the AI and the medical technology presents the extraordinary opportunities from the predictive diagnostics now to real-time patient monitoring and many more. But yet these advancements also introduce new complexities, and that must be navigated carefully, especially when it comes to public safety, clinical validation, and ethical data use. I cannot continuously put the emphasis on the word data here. It's very, very critical, very, very important. It even governs towards our personal data information out there that we use when you are, everything is being tracked from your phone to your handheld devices to even your watch and many more. So that brings me to the aim of today's discussion, to collaborate and implement the first regulatory sandbox for medical devices in Malaysia between the Medical Device Authority and Futurise. With this proposed regulatory sandbox, it's more than a testing platform. or a testing mechanism that is a strategic for us to accelerate the responsible innovation for the innovators to do this safely in terms of the trial for the AI-driven medical technologies within a controlled environment under the oversight of NTA. So our aim is clear. We want to support the industrial growth while safeguarding the public health. And this is also full alignment with the MDA's mandate under the Medical Device Act 2012, Act 737. But in order to achieve this vision, we must address a crucial challenge of the regulation. So again, innovation thrives in the environments that allow experimentation, and this is where the regulatory sandboxes will be the transformative role. The same sandbox framework will allow the industry to experiment with new ideas without the immediate constraints of existing regulations, enabling the rapid prototyping and faster scaling. So this is very important in terms of validating and then scale up and leading towards commercialization. So we, Futurise, we believe that the sandbox again is a perfect enabler and really crucial for this. So for the regulatory sandbox for the medical device, why is it very important, and we're going to speak more about this today. One is to pilot and validate the AI medical technologies in a risk-managed environment. We also look at enabling the regulatory bodies to observe and respond to real-time challenges, build more confidence among the innovators and clinicians and the public, and ultimately fast-track the adoption of the safe, patient-centric innovations into our healthcare ecosystem. We also need to help different level of enforcement or regulators as far as we want to use medical new technologies in a safe manner. So we at Futurise, we believe that innovation should not be hindered by uncertainty, not even also for the safety to be compromised in the name of progress. And with that, again, for us, Futurise, we're very committed to support the aspirations of a safe digital health ecosystem. So we look forward to working closely with all our partners, including those in attendance today, see how we can help you, both in the government industry, and together we can create the regulatory landscape that empowers all of us, the businesses, encourages innovation, and ensure that Malaysia stays at the forefront of the global industrial growth. So we look forward to work closely with MDA and all of you again, ecosystem partners, Siemens again, once again, thank you. And let this RegTalk be the first of the many more purposeful dialogues. And all the best that we have later very interesting and insightful discussions after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Shafinas, for your thoughtful words and for setting the tone for today's important discussion. Next, we are honoured to invite our key collaborator for today's session, the Medical Device Authority, MDA. Please welcome Madam Idamazura M. Senior Director of the Pre-Market Control Division, MDA, to deliver her keynote address. Please welcome.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I have to bring water bottle. I just recovered from fever and so hot. Or just preparation. Okay, our VIP guest, Yang Berusaha Madam Shafinas, Acting Chief Executive Officer, Futurise and Healthineers. Yang Berusaha Mr. Jen Tiedemann, hope I pronounced correctly, Finance Director, Siemens Healthineers Malaysia. Respectful panel speaker, my colleague, Puan Idamazura, binti Idris, Senior Director Policy and Strategic Planning Division, Medical Device Authority, Dr. Yiu-Cho Chung, okay, Head Research Collaboration, Siemens Healthcare Singapore, Mr. Deepak Pillai, Head Technology, Media, Telecommunication and Data Protection, Christopher Lee and All Malaysia, Mr. Elia Al-Hakim, Associate Asia Group Advisor. Good afternoon everyone, esteemed guests, distinguished professional and respected colleagues from across the medical device industry. It's a privilege actually, MDA working together with Futurise with this time frame whereby all AI is kicked off everywhere. So it's a really privilege to MDA working together with Futurise. So I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Murali Taran, and it's actually this text prepared for him. So Dr. Muralidharan is the CEO of Medical Device Authority. So he was away for other event. So I'm delivering on behalf of MDA for the speech today. As we gather here today to explore a subject that sits at the intersection of cutting-edge technology and ethical responsibility, artificial intelligence in medical device. The theme balancing innovation and safety is not merely a slogan. Okay? It's a guiding principle for Malaysia health tech future. In a world rapidly shaped by algorithm, it's become our shared duty to ensure that technological advancement continue to serve humanity, not outpace it. Let us begin by acknowledging the transformative power of AI. In healthcare, AI is transforming everything from early diagnostic and clinical decision making to automating repetitive workflow. Okay? Imagine a radiology tool that spots anomalies invisible to human eye, or a smart insulin pump that adjusts dosage in real time based on predictive modeling. I'm not sure if you have aware, recently I encountered one journal. I just read the article that stated AI detect breast cancer years before diagnosis from mammogram. I'm sure if you encountered the journal, it was discovered last year, whereby this is opening doors to the professional preventive treatment and more effective care. So that is really really meaningful to the professional healthcare especially. Okay, this innovation is unprojection. They are already reshaping patient care globally and increasingly hereby also in Malaysia. So we are not outskirts from this. We are also now is actually observing all this AI technology happening in Malaysia. Okay, our hospital, startup research are embracing AI in diagnostic, remote monitoring, and even in streamlining hospital administration. The future we speak is already forming the roots in the present. So now let's zoom in Malaysia landscape. The Medical Device Authority under the Ministry of Health play a pivotal role in overseeing product safety and quality. While existing framework provide a foundation, AI bring novel challenge to demand regulatory evolution. So now this is what we are talking about. When we encounter with AI, what we have now is a regulatory frameworks. So is this regulatory framework can suit with the AI we are speaking nowadays? So this is our challenge as regulator. So we also have to admit the regulatory is also need and required evolution. So because we have to understand, the basis having a regulatory is a foundation to cater conventional technology. When you're talking about regulatory of medical device, 10 years back, 15 years back, you're not looking into this AI. So I believe with all this AI, everywhere globally is actually looking in the perspective and required to have a mindset as a regulator to understand and admit our regulatory have to evolve as well. So because this is the thing, we cannot have regulatory to prevent the innovation. So we cannot have a stigma whereby regulatory is a block to the innovation. So this is the thing, the challenge from our as a regulatory, the challenge from the academia, challenge from the researcher, everywhere. So I think having Futurise together with MDA, powered by Siemens, this is the right time for us to have a very conclusive talk, discussion, where is we are going from today. So, frankly speaking, what we have in MDA, we have regulatory specified by our Act 737. So how is this Act can be navigated and help in terms of revolution to cater AI? So that will be further discussed. Okay? So, of course, with innovation comes responsibility. We cannot deny that. Okay? So the risk posed by AI is real and urgent. So we do understood algorithm can inherit bias. How do we cater that one? Okay? So their decision may be difficult to interpret, raising question, accountability. So we cannot forget the paramount to the important to protect the patient data as well. So that is also another areas that we have to look into. Trust is the heartbeat of the healthcare. As we automate more systems, we must ensure that transparency, security, fairness are deeply embedded in everything we build up. So the industry also need to play a role. So what is their role? They have to comply with the global standard. ISO, IEC related to all this kind of activity. So without overseeing the ethical way of doing the innovation, that is also very important. So how do we strike balance between innovation and safety? So this is also another question. How to strike out innovation and balance it with the safety? Okay. First, we must center collaboration, bringing together developer, clinician, ethics, and regulator in the shared space of co-creation. So as I mentioned, so this is cannot be run in one person. You as the academia, you as a developer, you also cannot work as in silo without looking into all other requirement related. So what we need to do, we bring out everyone in one space as a co-creation. Okay? Next, we need to have a rigorous real-world validation beyond lab environment. So this is what a challenge. Okay? So why is it a challenge? Conventional medical device, we have preclinical testing, we have clinical investigation in a controlled environment. Okay? So when you're talking about AI, this all technology, the data is already there. The data is already in the real world evident. Okay? So this is the things that regulator must understood and how a challenge by the side of regulator to cater this kind of situation. Okay? So when you're talking about AI, you cannot say that have you conducted clinical investigation? Frankly speaking, I think everyone here who is working with medical device industry is very familiar with the wording clinical investigation, clinical evaluation. So have you done it? So the kind of question or conventional way of asking evidence based on medical device, conventional way, might not be applicable directly to AI in medical device. I don't have the answer to this, but we are open to working together. Okay? So, regulator sandbox could provide the ideal environment. As what could provide the ideal environment to test and iterate safely. And education must remain continuous for developer, user, and decision maker alike, so evolve alongside of our technology. So Futurise, in partnership with Medical Device Authority, proud to host the RegTalk to encourage an open expert-led discussion. So let us be like, this is the first medium whereby we can have an open-led discussion to discuss how should we move on after this. Okay? So we believe that regulatory sandbox can be an essential tool offering a control setting to test, validate, and improve AI technology in healthcare while ensuring safety and ethics. It's allow regulator to learn in real time and give innovator a chance to develop responsibly. There are keywords there. It's allow regulator to learn in real time and give innovator a chance to develop responsibly. So AI, of course, understood, is a real time. Okay, so conventional way, talking about medical device, we are collecting evidence base through clinical investigation in a controlled environment. So this is the things that I believe we have to find a way to understand the process. Okay. Looking ahead, Malaysia is poised to become a regional leader in ethical medical innovation. But reaching this goal requires unity. So I envision a future shaped by tri-sector collaboration where industry, government, academia work together to innovate boldly and govern wisely. Through joint task force, share research, public engagement, we can drive progress that is both powerful and principled. This is more than a call to innovate, it's a call to lead with integrity. Okay, before I leave, I want to give some thought to everyone. Technology will always evolve. Okay, always evolve. We're talking about technology, is always evolve. But the value we uphold, a commitment to safety, equity, and compassion must remain our compass. Okay? Thank you for your patience, expertise, and dedication for the future of healthcare. The AI revolution is not coming, it's already here. So let us together shape it for benefit of every Malaysian life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Idawati, for that insightful keynote for sharing your vision with us. Now, I would like to hand things over to today's moderator who will be guiding us through the panel session. Introducing our moderator for today, Deepak Pillai. He is a partner at Christopher & Leong with over 2 decades of experience. Deepak is a leading expert in technology, media, and telecommunications law, as well as data privacy and protection. Since 1997, he has advised a wide range of clients across both public and private sectors on legal matter, on legal directories, involving IT, e-commerce, telecoms, and digital media. Widely recognized in major legal directories, Deepak is known for pioneering IT law in Malaysia and bringing a strong blend of legal insight and business acumen to the tech space. Please welcome Mr. Deepak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel session on AI medical devices in Malaysia, balancing innovation and safety. As introduced, I think we need to emphasize certain points. I've been in practice for 30 years, right? 90% of it has been in the technology area with data protection. I'm working with CLO, I've been working with CLO for 10 years now. And we are the largest firm in the country actually at the moment. And we lead the largest TMT data protection team. With 20 lawyers focusing on this, on technology detection. So that's the bit I have to confirm, right? I would like to thank Futurise, MDA, and Siemens Healthineers for inviting me to moderate this session. And before I move on to the panelists, my opening address basically is that it's undeniable that artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming many sectors. It's not only health sector. Apart from healthcare, which is what we are all here for, it's also impacting the automotive sector, or customer care sector, programming as a job, cybersecurity, the legal sector, accountants, and the list goes on. It's affecting everyone. My son is in university, my daughter's in university. I've talked to them about what is AI proof or will be affected by AI the least, right? And one of them is a doctor, going to be a doctor. So I think this talk is very relevant, right, to see what's coming. Healthcare is no exception, and it will have the most fundamental effect on all of us, if done correctly, by potentially having an effect on the quality of our lives, the treatments that we receive, and ultimately extending our lives. So healthcare is one of the most vital things going on. So more specifically, from a medical treatment perspective, across the world, AI is being integrated into medical specialties such as radiology, oncology, ophthalmology, and general diagnostics. These technologies are not just improving operational efficiencies, they are improving clinical outcomes. For example, research experts have shown that AI is almost twice as accurate as biopsies at judging the aggressiveness of some cancers, such as sarcomas, a rare form of cancer that develops in the body's connective tissues. So this actually signals a future where earlier and more accurate diagnosis becomes standard practice, making it even more essential that innovation in this space continues to be encouraged while adequately regulated, right? So both must carry on. For countries like Malaysia, where access to experienced specialists may be uneven across urban and rural settings, AI could also help bridge gaps in care delivery and support clinicians at all levels. So it's important that we continue to allow innovation in this space, especially when it can strengthen our national health outcomes. However, with such promise comes great responsibility. I think that's the term from Superman, right? As the use of AI in medical devices introduces unique risks, these systems must be reliable and consistently deliver safe and accurate outcomes. They must also be secure with safeguards in place to prevent misuse, whether accidental or unintentional, or intentional rather. So privacy is another key concern. This is close to my heart. Health data is among the most sensitive types of personal data. In fact, it's called sensitive personal data in Malaysian legislation. And AI systems are often trained on large data sets to function effectively. So it is crucial that these systems handle data ethically and in compliance with legal protections, ensuring that patients' information is not being shared without consent. So that needs to be ensured, because at the end of the day, the law needs to be complied with and there are protections for personal data in the law. Equally important is this concept of explainability. So whenever an AI system delivers a diagnosis or recommendation, that must be understandable to medical professionals so that they can make informed decisions and not rely on it blindly or in good faith, right? In short, AI tools should augment, not obscure human judgment. So I'm a lawyer, and what troubles me is the fact that opinions, we draft legal opinions, and those are central to what we do. What troubles me is that it takes a number of years for us to develop that skill, how to write an opinion, how to convince a client, how to point out things. That lawyers these days are using AI to draft opinions. So they're no longer authors, they're editors. So when you ask them to author something without AI, they're lost. So that's troubling, and I think the same thing will play itself out across many different sectors as well. Yeah, so anyway, so there are other issues as well. If the AI medical device results in injury or death of patients, who will bear liability? That's a key question. So if the Tesla goes off on its own uses your own mind and results in an accident, who is liable? Is it the person who sold you the car, or is it Tesla as a manufacturer? Is it the insurer? So we don't have an idea actually right now. Policies are still being developed. So these are larger questions best left to our legislators and our judges, and we should take time to settle, right? Very few cases, they come to a position and then they will legislate on it, and if the law finds that it's objectionable, they may actually come up with decisions contrary to it as well. That's a process, it takes many years. So that being the case, is there a way we can let AI loose, but within boundaries, and just in case it goes awry, can we limit its fallout, right? So there is, and I think that is via sandboxes, as to be addressed during the panel discussion. So during the panel discussion, we are going to explore how Malaysia can foster innovation in AI medical devices while safeguarding patient safety, public trust, and clinical integrity. So our session today will cover AI medical devices across 5 areas: the regulatory framework for AI medical devices. Second, how do we ensure that AI devices can be trusted? Number 3, the idea of regulatory sandboxes for AI medical devices. Post-market challenges. And lastly, the future of AI medical devices. So I think that's all I'm going to say to start with. Let me introduce the panelists. So panelists, could you join me up in front? Yeah. Dr. Cho, Elia, and Puan. Thank you. Come. A round of applause for the So, to introduce the panelists, first we have on my left, Madam Idamazura, binti Idris. She's the Senior Director of the Policy and Strategic Planning Division of the Medical Device Authority. She currently serves as the Senior Director of Policy and Strategic Planning Division. And her division is responsible for leading the strategic policy development, regulatory planning, and initiatives that support the safe and effective regulation of the medical device industry in Malaysia. Previously, she's held prominent roles such as Director of the Post-Market Surveillance and Enforcement Division, where she was deeply involved in industry compliance, regulatory enforcement, and public health policy. Puan has contributed both domestically and internationally to forums on medical device regulation, and she's noted for providing input on publications about Malaysia's position as a medical device trial hub, and she's involved in actively engaging stakeholders in regulatory strategy. So, a round of applause for Puan. And then we have Dr. Cho, honored to be with you, Dr. Cho. He's the head of the research collaboration arm of Siemens Healthcare Singapore. Am I correct? Yeah. So Dr. Cho got his PhD in biomedical engineering at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. He has worked as a scientist in the cardiovascular MR research and development teams of Siemens Medical Solutions in Chicago for 10 plus years, where he developed novel imaging sequences for cardiac MRI. He moved back to Hong Kong for 6 years, and then he rejoined Siemens in Singapore as the head of research collaboration since 2016. So that's about 9 years now, right? So Dr. Chung has published over 60 papers and holds 6 patents. So Dr. Chung. And third is Elia Al-Hakim, Associate of Asian Group Advisors. Elia is an associate at Asian Group Advisors Malaysian office, advising on regulatory and policy issues across the tech, digital health, and healthcare sectors, including developments in AI governance. He has supported companies navigating complex policy environments shaped by emerging technologies and evolving regulations. He was part of a regional report examining AI readiness across ASEAN markets. and his expertise spans stakeholder engagement, AI focus, policy advisory, tech-related developments, and regulatory analysis within fast-changing industry. So, welcome to Elia. So, to get things started, to get things on the road, first off, let's look at the regulatory framework. Sorry, do you want to run through your slides or? Okay, so I think what Ida needs to address us. So before we move into the panel discussion, maybe we will talk about MDA's role, because that is central to our exercise, right? So MDA's role in shaping and safe and innovative AI medical device regulation.
Let me control the slides. I hope I can see my slide over there. Okay, so because I need to give a brief introduction of MDA, but in this innovation themes. Okay, so I prepared my slides to highlight the role of MDA in shaping safe and innovative AI medical device regulation. So, my biography. Okay. So, I want to introduce you about MDA. Who is MDA actually? We are actually a statutory body under the Ministry of Health, which established under Medical Device Authority Act in 2012. So our responsibility is to enforce the Medical Device Act to ensure safety and performance of medical device marketed in Malaysia. Okay. So our core responsibility is including controlling the medical device, the conformity assessment body, the establishment via registration and licensing, and we also oversee the conformity assessment procedures and process, and we actually do the monitoring of post-market surveillance and vigilance that we impose to the establishment. Further, we are also need to develop policies, review and develop policies to ensure that our regulatory is always in line with the technology. Okay. So this, as shown in the slide, it is how we map the regulatory requirement according to phases. So we impose requirement on conformity assessment in pre-market phase, and then we introduce the registration, licensing, and advertisement approval in placement in the market phase, and we impose the requirement to monitor, to carry out the surveillance and vigilance of the medical device in the post-market phase. And furthermore, we also control in terms of usage of medical devices, which we impose to the user, so that they are using according to the IFU and doing the maintenance accordingly. So why we need to regulate the AI-enabled medical device? Okay. So, as everybody know, AI actually offers advancement in diagnostic, in healthcare, and also offer the efficiency in managing the patients. Okay, but AI also poses risks and challenges, especially in terms of safety and performance. sorry I can't see, bias and explainability, and also accountability and ethics. Okay, because it deals with lots of data, right? And so we have our regulatory goal, hopefully to enable the innovation without compromising the patient safety. Okay. What is MDA approach to AI medical device regulation? So we are actually coming up with transformative regulatory strategy. At the moment, we are conducting gap analysis with our current regulatory framework, and we're doing the benchmarking to the international best practice and also framework, and hopefully we can propose a flexible and adaptive regulatory framework to cater AI and also software as a medical device. And of course, we want to have a framework that is life cycle based. We consider the full life cycle of AI medical device, which cover pre-market deployment and continuous post-market monitoring, meaning collecting the real-world data, okay, to continuously do the evaluation on the performance. And also, we try to explore the policies for adaptive AI. For example, now we are looking at the predetermined changes control plan, which has been implemented by US FDA. And also, we try to impose a new requirement to the establishment to collect the post-market data. So hopefully with this, we can support the innovation while ensuring the safety, which the key initiative that we are doing currently, including developing the guidance document for software as medical device and AI medical device, and we also exploring the regulatory sandbox so that we can cater the new innovative medical devices. And then we want to strengthen the post-market surveillance for real-world performance monitoring. Okay, and then hopefully we can also engage with all stakeholders so that we can build trust through transparency, education, and collaboration. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we also in the midst of aligning our framework to the global regulatory convergence. At the moment, MDA actively participate in IMDRF, GHWP, AMDC, and APEX. And with this, we would like to share our insight and contribute our knowledge to the international convergence effort. And our mission is to position Malaysia as a trusted and responsive regulator in AI medical device space and ensure regulatory flexibilities and readiness for emerging healthcare technology, and also to foster safe, ethical, and responsible innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan. I was very kindly reminded that each of the panelists have got something to say. So, moving on to Dr. Chung. Yes, of course, of course.
Testing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this very important panel discussion. So I came from the R&D background, so I also have some work which become clinical products, so I know a little bit about the regulatory processes. So I'd like to share with you the AI application in healthcare, particularly the AI for clinical decision support tools, which is something we always will be interested in. Very obviously, change a lot of things. So, I mean, we are looking into a world which have a very fundamental demographic shift. We have global staff shortages, especially in healthcare. We have a population growth, and so we have a stress in terms of cost pressure. We have to make do with the money that we have, hire more people, but don't have it, and then we have the more people to serve. And we also have life-threatening diseases on the rise. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative disease are something which is long-term and require different strategy. Meanwhile, we would like to serve our Mother Nature a little bit better. I mean, we don't want to waste any resources that we have and hurt Mother Nature. So what we are doing is that we want to use AI to leverage this. So we can use AI to increase productivity by reducing administrative work, by streamlining workflow or improving risk acquisition. We can also improve the clinical precision by using the clinical decision support tools that we have using AI. And we can also try to reduce energy consumption. We want to image less, get more on each image, and try to get better access to some of the population. So just an overview of what AI is like. We're talking about AI a lot. I would like to just take as example from the radiology department, a simple diagram. So what we do when we do build an AI apps or AI model is that we collect the data from the clinic, and then we would process it, pre-process it. And then the data in terms of images, in our case, and outcomes, which are the reports, the segmentation, the tumor volumes and things like that, will be put into an engine so that the engine would learn to read the images and come out with the reports which are correct. And this is what we call learning. Once the software learns the data, how to read it and generate reports, it will give out a model, a mathematical equation or more, a mathematical program or whatever. And then this model will be fed with real-life data. And then the real-life, the results coming from this model will be provided to the physician for their clinical decision support. So here we have a few things that we need to know. Data availability is key. I think in the past discussion we have a distinguished speaker mentioning about the importance of data. Both the quantity and quality are important. You know that if you, garbage in, garbage out. So how is the data quality guaranteed? So another thing that we need to know is that data cleaning is very important. We want to make sure that what the system learns is clean and correct, right? You don't want to teach the kids bad things, right? The first thing is that training is a very resource-intensive task. If you train a model and you don't use it, you are wasting the resources of the world. It requires GPUs, it requires a lot of memory, and it requires energy. So when you do something, we make sure that this is something that you want to use. Don't put it aside, because it's consuming the resources in the world. Another thing that I would like to mention a little bit is about the trend. We're talking about the large language model and all this stuff. Is put under the category of generative AI. And we need to be careful about this. Generative AI doesn't have things that it learns from what we call the stuff, but it doesn't use the outcomes to use as a reference. It's, so it creates new contents through learned inputs. It doesn't use the references that you put to guide it. So that's why you see people talking about hallucination and all this stuff, crazy things. And this is something we need to be careful of when we do AI. So there are two things that we need to know. Something that you guide it so that it learns from you. Something that you learn somewhere and then you use it in different purposes, for instance. And these have different risks, and we need to think about this. Okay, now let's get back to the radiology department. Go to the imaging room where we do an MRI. So we take MRI as an example, and that's what my specialty was. So we have a patient coming into the scanner room, and then we setting up, and then we acquire the images. The system will generate images, and then will be sent to the physicians for reporting. And then the reports will be used by other clinicians to decide on the treatment plan, how to manage the patient, surgery, radiotherapy, whatever, right? Now, if you notice that the first 3 steps involves nurses and radiographers. The last step involves radiologists. Okay, so if you look into what we can do with AI in this several cases, when we do patient preparation, nowadays a lot of the scanners have 3D cameras already. The 3D camera is very important because it locates the position of the anatomical positions that you want to image and save time of the radiographers or nurse in positioning the patient into the scanner. It's good. It's a good thing. Sometimes it even reduces radiation dose because you know what area that you want to image. The second part is the acquisition and reconstruction. It shortens scan time because when you do some more thing, put more tricks to it, you can reduce the mouse clicks. You can optimize scan time. And recently, AI reconstruction is very popular. It improves the spatial resolution and reduces noise, which may result in better image quality, shorten the scan time, and hence improve productivity. So now comes the third part, reporting. We talk about this. This is where the doctors, the real doctors, come in. So they analyze the images. They go through the images carefully. They identify abnormalities. They draw contours. They draw boxes, and then they report the findings. Right? And this is where we call the clinical decision support tools. These results are going to influence the subsequent patient management. And if you can help this, you will reduce reporting times. You get reports which are more consistent among senior and junior radiologists. This will be very, very useful. So if you take a look at these 3 steps, the first 2 parts are actually usually embedded into a medical device. A CT scanner, an MR scanner, usually would be put into, AI's algorithm will be put into it, and probably they would be vetted or regulated by standard medical device regulations. Because we only need to prove that this new version with AI is better than the earlier version. That is just the usual way that we do for regulatory approval. Now, the second part here is where I think it's Wild West, the clinical decision support tools. People would like to put the images to an AI algorithm and generate reports and send it over to the doctors or the referring doctors. This is not a standard practice in the past, right? We always have to go through the radiologists, and then they will go through the images carefully, and if they find abnormalities, which is not something that they would expect, they will wonder whether this is an artifact or whether this is pathology. And now we are having an AI system to do it, and that is where I would like to concentrate a little bit on. So I would like to use a use case that we have been working with a partner in Singapore. So National University of Singapore have a cellular science department, and they are working together with National University hospitals to build an AI model for the reading of MR images of the lumbar spine. So NUS provides the technical expertise. NUH provides the need. Tell them the use cases, the data, and then they work on it. So they publish a paper finding that that model that they propose really works. Generate reports that are useful in diagnostic purposes. But they did not stop there. They look into 2 important aspects: accuracy and productivity. You see here, this is a summary table that they have. What they found is that they put out in another paper is that the model that they built have an obvious time savings, even among experts, and that is very important. You feel this is faster compared to the newbies. Well, of course, right? But when it's so that the productivity is increasing even among the senior radiologists, that is something that we need to think about the clinical relevance. And another thing is that it's accurate among the three, compared to the three levels of experience among the radiologists. What is more important here is that you can see the consistent accuracy from these three levels of expertise. So you see that the model is really helping the radiologist. First is reducing time. Second is giving an accuracy, which is better than the junior staff. The third is that it's very consistent. So they didn't stop there. That's why they have to move on. And so they work with us and come up with a clinical model software that we run on our sandbox, and they're now using it on a daily basis. So to just sum up the discussions that we have, if you ask, can we do it? I think we can, right? I mean, people are doing it. Should we do it? I think we have all the reasons to go forward to it. We have to go for it. But are we doing it right? I think that is the discussions that we're going to have today. And I hope, this discussion will stimulate the audience, all of you, to in this doing it right, doing the right way thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. And over to Elia next. Yes, of course. Hello. All right, great.
Hi everyone, thank you for giving me this opportunity to maybe tell you a little bit about where I'm from and what we're doing. So in a nutshell, my company is called Asia Group Advisors. I'm part of that company, and we're an access partnership company, which is a larger entity across, and we have offices across the world. We focus on sectoral issues, so healthcare being one of them. We have telecommunication sectors that we focus on as well. And essentially, the role that we play is we help advise the private sector on either A, how do you operate in separate markets, or B, how do you get up to date with the latest regulations and policies in the world. So the simple UVP of the company is we make innovation work for the world. And what this essentially means is we partner up with policy experts, we partner up with regulators, and we try to help facilitate an innovation shift and ensure that there's a ring-fence development for innovation in several of the sectors that I mentioned earlier. So this is just a bit of a image of the various markets that we are operating in the world. We have offices across Southeast Asia, London, DC, and several spread across Europe. But currently in Asia Group Advisors, we are part of the Southeast Asia division, so we mainly focus on the Southeast Asia regulations. So we're just going to address a little bit on the different business arms of the sectors that we work with. Primarily in Asia Group Advisors, we are the geopolitical advisory and policy advocacy arm. So we do deal a lot with regulators, we deal a lot with policies. Essentially, you can see us as sort of a bridge between companies and local market regulators, either in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, and the list goes on. Aside from GAPA, for short, we also have tech-enabled verticals. And in this, we have a team of policy advisors that do specialize in health and science issues. They have addressed and had consultations with the Health Transformation Advisory Committee on even medical devices and AI and the development of that. So that's their niche. Then we also have global government advisories, which we step a little bit to the other side of the pond and start talking to government regulators and assist them in maybe creating frameworks or helping them bring up to speed their current priorities in their markets. Then we also have economic strategy, which is simply helping the governments and the private sector collaborate through economic and social strategies. And really quickly, data governance and space and connectivity. So this is the practice that we primarily operate in in Southeast Asia. I've seen quite some of you in various events, and I'm sure you might have heard of us, but if not, that's fine. Essentially, we have four main things that we like to do a lot, and it's four activities. The first is on stakeholder engagement. Second, on political risk advisory. The third, on foreign direct investment facilitation. And fourth, on strategic communications. So our ideology and our mindset here is that in order for a good governance sort of framework to exist in markets, especially in more developing markets like the Southeast Asia and Malaysia, for example, there has to be sufficient participation, not just from the private sector, but from also academia, from the government regulators, and ensuring that there's a cross-collaboration initiatives. So we do help bridge that gap between the different players in this system. On stakeholder engagement, it's about explaining to potential companies that might not understand, for example, Malaysia's landscape on medical devices or AI or healthcare in general, and bridging that gap and explaining how we've been developing. Another example would be perhaps on our recent developments to the Privacy and Data Protection Act, and explaining how it's not a scary thing, but rather it aligns with the larger GDPR rules. Next is on a bit more of a political risk advisory note. I think one thing that we should all keep in mind when it comes to operating in different markets, one of the concerns that a lot of companies have when they decide whether they want to open up shop is whether that climate is stable politically. We help give them a rough analysis and an explanation of how the political risks are, translate that, and explain whether it is good for their markets or not. Similar here in FDI facilitation, it's things like understanding what is the licensing process, who are the regulators you have to talk to, what are the upcoming laws that you might need to be concerned with before you set a foot into this market. And lastly, strategic communications. I think we're seeing a trend nowadays that more and more companies are not just concerned about regulations that may impact their bottom line, but also concerned about the brand or reputation that they may have in certain markets. With the advent of social media and also all of these narratives and cancel culture, I think it's important for the companies to be able to shape their message and share what is their outcome and objective to the market that they're trying to fix. Yes, and I'll conclude that there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah, thank you. So we will now move on with the panel session. And the first thing that I was going to talk about was the regulatory framework. I was going to ask Dr. Puan to introduce the regulatory framework to us. I believe that she has already, to a certain extent, talked about it, right? But really, in real terms, being a lawyer, we need specifics. So, can I just check with you? Is there a process in place already for AI medical devices? And how long has that process been in place? And overall, when you look at the number of medical device applications that come in, what percentage is occupied by AI devices? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In terms of giving approval, it is actually an ongoing process. Okay. And in terms of revising, reviewing the current framework, we are in the midst of doing that. So at the moment, we are trying to come up with a guidance document to address requirement for the software as medical devices. But that one is very general, not focusing to AI, but some element will be inside, will be explained further in separate document which we are currently compiling all the information. And in terms of percentage, I think this question maybe Puan Idawati can answer because she is the head of pre-market control. She oversees the registration of medical device. I think at the moment we have some AI medical device being registered with us.
Yeah, but I suppose because you don't have guidelines in place right now, those are on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, yes. Because most of the medical devices marketed in Malaysia is actually an imported medical device. So we actually referring to the approval given by authority that we're referring to, for example, US, Australia, Japan. I guess those AI medical devices have been approved in those countries, so we just accept the approval. We verify the approval and accept it and giving the approval to for them to market to Malaysia.
Thank you. And Puan Ida, so basically what else is being done regionally, from a regional level, in terms of efforts to govern medical devices with AI?
As I mentioned in my slides, we are actually actively participate in IMDRF, which is International Medical Device Regulator Forums, and then GHWP, Global Harmonization Working Party, and also APEC, ASEAN Pacific Cooperation, Economic Cooperation. So this forum has, been discussing the AI and so on, whereby like IMDRF, they also have come up the guidance documents on software as medical device, but not yet on the AI specifically. So I think they are actually discussing and trying to come up with the regulatory framework that is flexible to address all the challenges posed by the AI and also software as medical device.
So one last question before I move on. So in terms of the applications that come in, is there, because they will base their application on the approvals obtained in other jurisdictions, is there a preferred jurisdiction? Like if it comes from Europe, definitely in. If it comes from the US, maybe suspect.
No, there's no such thing. Actually, we have 6 countries that we actually refer. With their approval, they can actually shorten the process of approval, including the conformity assessment procedures. So that is how we do and treat the application.
Can you name those 6 countries?
As I mentioned just now, US, Canada, Australia, Japan, UK, and also EU.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right. So moving on to Elia, I think you would know the position in Malaysia. Could you elaborate to the audience what is the position in other jurisdictions? How are jurisdictions such as the EU, the US, and the UK, the ones more on the cutting edge, approaching the regulation of AI medical devices? Is one jurisdiction, the EU for instance, more careful than another, like the US, or is it one more safe and one more innovative? Share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And feel free to correct me if there's any misconceptions. But I think when we look at the EU, let's start with that, right? And we all are sort of aware on the EU AI Act. And that is one of the things that we have to take into consideration when looking at AI medical devices. Because in the EU, they use the EU AI Act, and they also use the MDR medical devices regulations. But explicitly in the EU AI Act, it categorizes all healthcare-related AIs as high risk. Of course, this is delineated then in the MDR, but I think that's one thing that we have to take into consideration, that the when we look at the AI market as a whole, there is a lot of concern, in fact, with the implementation of the EU AI Act, because initially they wanted to get a launch date a lot earlier, 2026. But now regulators in the EU are looking to push it back to maybe 2029, and the discussion is ongoing. And one of the main concerns in EU, especially as it relates back to medical devices and AI, is can companies comply, right? If you put those regulations, can they comply? And if they can't, what are you going to do, right? So we have to ensure that that is sort of understood as a lesson for Malaysia. And then juxtapose that with the US. And I think the US is interesting. If you think about it, they are a very innovation-heavy state. One way you can describe the market for AI medical devices is they focus on adaptation. So like Puan just now was mentioning, there is this predetermined control, change of control plan that is essentially being used in the US alongside other markets. And what it is when you submit your licenses for your AI, your algorithm, you also create a plan on how those licenses will probably evolve in the future, so that when they do evolve and the algorithm does update, you're able to then not have to go back to the regulatory authority, but you can just immediately use it kind of streamline. And this is interesting because this definitely we do see a development when it comes to innovation in the US. I think there was research done prior that between 1990s to about 2010s, there was only about 10 AI medical devices approved in the US. After that, from 2011 to the current date, there's about 650 plus. So definitely we can see that this innovation is quite key in ensuring that there is a streamlined process and less bureaucracy for innovators, perhaps essentially startups. Lastly is on the UK. I think the UK also does do the same thing with the US with this PCCP. But also, the UK has their regulatory sandbox in place, right? They have their other regulations, but right now they are undergoing a regulatory sandbox with certain market players that have opted into the pilot. And I think that's concluding soon this year. And I think it'll be an interesting opportunity because what their approach is essentially inviting what we're going to do now as well, right? We're inviting the market players to come and we're inviting the policymakers to keep a close eye on them to see whether there are any sort of issues that might have crossed over our heads or issues that have brought forward when we localize this AI medical device. And I think those are generally the differences I see.
Thank you, Elia. So now moving on to Dr. Cho. I'm going to depart from the question that I originally proposed, right, in our discussions, and refer back to the slides that you just shared with us. So in there you spoke about what's happening in Singapore, where the radiological outcomes were shared with us. So in Singapore, is it legislated or is it soft law or is it based on a sandbox? Could you share information about that with us?
Yeah, as far as I know, I'm not in the quality and team, but as far as I know, they don't have a sandbox. But the way they discuss this is that they have 2 years probably, where they organize AI summits or conferences, and where the ethical and the safety or regulatory issues become a very important topic, and they invite speakers and other people in other countries to share their opinions. So they, whether they have the regulations per se, I can't comment on that. But the fact is that the discussion brings into table the users, which are the doctors, the technologists, the scientists, as well as the ethicists. So multifaceted, not just the regulatory people. The regulatory people would learn from them and work on it. That's what I know as far as your question is concerned. So academia, the users, which are the doctors, they can sometimes be the developers too, just like what we saw here, right? and then the the philosophers, so-called, that looks into ethics. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So now coming back to the question I was going to originally ask you. So as you are the head of research collaboration in Singapore, have experience in the US and in Hong Kong, can you share with the audience how does one balance rapid prototyping and product development, which seems to be needed for AI development, with the need to comply with medical device regulatory requirements across different jurisdictions?
Okay, so maybe I should share what the Siemens
Yes.
Siemens does in the R&D processes. So whenever we have an idea, we will work on the prototypes. And depending on the nature of the project, we will either work in our lab or work with our clinical partners. So when we have come up with something, and a very important step that we do is to share the prototypes with our customers, the clinical users, the engineers, and hear from them the feedback. We call it the works in progress packages. They are prototypes, which is aimed to achieve the purpose, but they are not for clinical use. So through this evaluation, we collect feedback from them, either data that they found not working, or good cases. And all this stuff, we have partners all over the world. And we put them together, either discuss whether this product should be, this prototype should be a product, or whether it should just put aside, spend more time testing on it. And this data, if we decide to move forward, this data will usually be submitted to the FDA or filed together with the FDA for device approval. So that's how we work. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we just heard the panel's view as to how Malaysia and other global jurisdictions handle approaching the regulation of AI-enabled medical devices. So what's clear to me is that having a strong regulatory framework is essential, not only to guide developers and manufacturers, but also to set the foundation for safe and consistent deployment in clinical settings. But regulation alone is not enough. For AI to become a trusted part of healthcare delivery, it must win the confidence of the people. Trust then becomes a bridge between innovation and impact. It's what determines whether an AI medical device is simply approved on paper or is actually adopted. So in the next part of our discussion, we'll explore how trust can be built and maintained in the context of AI medical devices. So my first question is to Elia. How can policymakers build public trust in AI-based diagnostics and treatment tools? Can companies help with this?
Thanks for that question. I think it's an interesting question, right? When we think about trust, especially when it comes to tools, and the metric of tools usually is the success factor, or how well that tool performs. And that's what we understand maybe from a policy perspective, whether there are any issues with that tool. But for the public, I think one of the main concerns is whether they can opt into that product, whether they trust it, and not just for the public, but also for clinicians. I think there's a few issues here that maybe we have to consider when developing and pursuing this trust factor. When we talk about the localized landscape in Malaysia, this doesn't just go for Malaysia, but other countries that also have quite a wide divide when it comes to the rural and the urban areas. And just imagine maybe the future where we do have AI medical devices placed in some MOH hospitals in maybe more rural areas. I want to note that there will be a level of distrust, because pre-existingly there's already a level of distrust to perhaps traditional healthcare in MOH, right? Some people prefer alternative medicine, etc. So the question here is, how do you then bridge that gap and ensure that that trust is built and formed up? And I think one of the most important things as a whole in healthcare is having that clinicians and having your physicians being able to interpret that data. And I think this goes back to the point that was discussed earlier. There's a concern about a black box when it comes to AI medical devices. Some of you guys may have heard that when AI does its processing and developments, it sometimes just codes its own rationale so that it's able to save its capacity and data. But the problem then becomes it's decryptable when it comes to, or it's quite hard to decrypt. When it comes to clinicians and physicians, they only see, okay, this AI medical device has diagnosed a potential for breast cancer, but rather what are the rationales and the reasonings that have created this percentage of it creating breast cancer. And being able to get that explanation or to take the information out of that black box is quintessential, because at the end of the day, the health system in Malaysia is built on trust. How do then companies as well as the government sectors clearly bridge this gap and help this trust journey? Just a quick parallel here is when we think about the pandemic, for example, there was a lot of distrust going around, and it's because of something new that came into the market. There's a lot of misinformation that's happening, and there isn't a clear sense of reliability. And it took a lot of efforts from the government, public sector, and even your friends and family to be able to bridge that level of trust and to say these vaccines do not have any adverse side effects, for example. I think given that AI medical devices are still much new, we need to ensure that there is this level of understanding from the public that these things can actually save lives. They can quicken diagnosis speeds, they can quicken your understanding of what disease you may have, or potentially, when we think about it in a localized context, it could be things like preventing dengue during the dengue season and understanding when someone could get dengue in more rural areas. So to effectively show that you're able to avoid this risk, and it's a boon and there's little downside, is some educational campaigns that I think that companies and governments have to provide. It has to go a step further though. It has to also, you have to go and meet these people and explain on how you use it, and how when other people use it, it's also okay. So in a nutshell, I think trust is built through a long time, but it has to start somewhere. And in order for this to sort of be adopted by the public at large, we need to show and explain that level of how these decisions are being made. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So what you just said has sent my mind in a particular direction. So when you talk about content that you receive online, you have no idea whether content is from a human or content is from AI. And now they have got requirements where you have to label content. This is AI-based content. So for medical devices, Juanita, is there any requirement for AI labeling as yet?
Okay, because currently we are reviewing our guidance document on requirement of labeling of medical device. So we are actually trying to include or to have a specific requirement to address the labeling for the AI as well as software as medical device, so that the information can be obtained at anywhere, at any time by the users as well as the public. So we are actually looking at the best practice implemented by other regulatory authorities, as well as recommendation from the forum that I have mentioned. Then we need to see whether it's suitable to our public culture and so on. So that is what we do right now.
Thank you for that answer. And I'm not done yet. So the second question is, what role does MDA, it's a broader question, what role does MDA play in building public and clinician trust, so public and the clinicians, in medical AI devices?
Other than being a credible regulator, I think we are very friendly, a regulator, because we do lots of engaging with various stakeholders, especially industry. And now we want to engage the user, because they are the one who use the medical device, and they are actually experience all the the benefit, and also the shortfalls of the medical device. So we want to see or to get their opinion, information, so that we can always propose a good regulatory framework so that we can address safety and performance of the medical device.
So any idea when this regulatory framework will see the light of day?
Okay. Yeah, because to revise or to review the legal document will take some time. So what we do is we try to always keep updating our guidance documents to give a clear guidance to all stakeholders, and it is ongoing. For the software as medical device guidance document, our target is by next year we will issue the guidance. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Puan. So Dr. Cho, on the topic of clinician trust, how can feedback from medical practitioners be incorporated throughout the life cycle of an AI medical device? That's the first question. And should they be incorporated in fact? Over to you, sir.
So as I mentioned or explained before, our new products usually go through evaluation by our customers. So and these customers are clinical partners. Some of them are scientists, some of them are clinicians, some of them are physicists. So from their feedback, we would improve our products. So it's the improvement process or the feedback from the customers are pretty open. They would probably publish when they find that they are of clinical value or scientific value, or they would let us know, hey, this doesn't work, forget about it. So in that case, we are pretty transparent, and that's also why collaboration has been part of an important R&D process. Yeah.
Thank you for the answer. So essentially, I think your answer to the second question is that it should be incorporated, right?
Yes.
So thank you for the answers, panelists. So another way to build trust in AI medical devices is by looking at how they are introduced into the real world, right? You don't have an idea, there's a process to introduce it. So for clinicians and patients to trust AI devices, they need to know that those tools have been developed with care, tested responsibly, and evaluated transparently as well. So this brings us to a critical question. How do we enable that process of responsible testing, especially in the field, that's advancing as quickly as AI? So I think sandboxes are a solution, but are they a solution for both developers and regulators? I think the answer is yes. Are there examples that you can call on? So moving to Elia, how do you think regulators can strike a balance between patient safety and the fast-paced innovation in AI technology? And do let us know if, in your view, the regulatory sandbox, how vital a role do they play?
Thanks for that. Yeah, okay, thanks for that question. Quite an interesting question. I think short answer is yes, regulatory sandboxes will play a great role. And I think the reason why I say that is when you look at the UK, you even look at Singapore, although not AI medical devices, but telehealth in general, these regulatory sandboxes put you in a position where you have a controlled environment with your regulators as well as the companies and the devices at play. So in this scenario, it would help in terms of localizing the context of this AI medical device and raising any concerns that may have been missed in the first place. Another example is what a regulatory sandbox could also help do is enable this, I would consider this understanding the pulse of the country, right? So for example, in Japan, one of the things that I think was quite noteworthy is, as we're aware, Japan has quite strict data concerns from the public citizens, and they are concerned about where your data is going and how your data is being used to be fed into maybe, for example, machine learning. I think one of the governments and what the government tried to do was that they listened to the feedback from the public and the feedback from the clinicians, and they decided to sort of create a pseudo-anonymous data that would be inserted into machine learning, which therefore kind of had a win-win scenario where you kind of protected the data from the public, but at the same time you had to supply that data for machine learning. So that's one example of how we create good pulse. I think secondly, to answer the first part of that question in terms of how do you balance the two, right? You have to take it with a dual approach, and I think this is also reflected in AI discussions today, where we're in Malaysia, it's the ASEAN Chairmanship. We're going to have an AI summit next week. But one of the key things that I think everyone acknowledges is that in situations like Malaysia, where we're slowly catching up to the AI race, and I don't think that's a bad thing, right? And people don't think it's a bad thing because you have the benefit of foresight. You're able to see where the other countries erred and how to improve on that. But then it requires you to take on a bigger role, which is number one, catch up to the current AI scene right now. But number two, also predict what's going to happen in the next few years, so that you are able to incorporate that into your guidelines, incorporate that into how your products are being built. And honestly, regulatory frameworks and regulatory sandboxes will help have that frank discussion. One last thing before I pass back to my sorry. I think that it's also important that our regulators, as well as our agencies involved, have this sense of a joint committee to understand maybe after that regulatory sandbox, they realize that we need to speeden up this process of R&D, approval, etc. And therefore, by having at least a joint committee where they're able to discuss certain issues, maybe with MOSTI, MOHR, and MDA, you're able to get all the right people in the room and create decisions a lot more proactively, and that would be great for the country.
Thank you, yeah, so very thoughtful answer, appreciate it. So while I'm processing it in my mind, I'll move to Dr. Chung. So has your company, or are there companies that you are aware of that have engaged in regulatory sandbox programs or early dialogues with regulators to test AI medical innovations? Or is your experience that there's been no discussion, you just carry on and do it and share the results at these forums that you mentioned just now?
I am not aware of any, but I think there are some regulatory sandbox, but I'm not sure whether they are specifically for AI. But I do not know of any. But I think the fact is that in Siemens, we are a multinational company, and we would do it based on the requirements of EU and US. I mean, which are the two countries that it's also referenced here. I think from what I see is that we have a good reference. Japan, UK, the local authority would need to see the relevance of these regulations and the differences. And I just quote an example. So if you want to, there may be some demographic differences when you talk about model training, right? Caucasian population versus Asian populations may be different. You will need to look into that, which both US and EU may not address. I would put it that way. But other than that, I think with a good basis from these countries, I think this is a good starting point. I think this is the diseases, the current diseases. Say, for example, when you talk about NPC, I'm not sure if there's anybody here know nasopharyngeal cancer, which is very rare in the Caucasian, in the Western countries, and you may miss it, but you know that here is pretty common, right? So you need to know the differences in terms of demographics. Just one example, you need to look into. But other than that, I think say for example, the EU AI regulations are pretty strict actually. So if a device get approved there, we'll put probably pretty good to go, but just keep an eye on the population, east versus west.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Thank you. Some very good points there. Essentially, I mean, building on what Elia mentioned, the West may have done it first. We will not be on the bleeding edge, right? They will be on the bleeding edge. We don't go where angels fear to tread, basically. But at the end of the day, the AI initiative is still with us because we have got local requirements, right? You need to match the local demographic. So from that perspective, I think it's quite different from the tech race, because tech race is whoever reaches that first. Whereas in Malaysia, in the region, it is based on the local demographic as well. So some interesting points there. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to Puan Ida. I was going to ask you about whether you're working on a dedicated framework or guidance for software as a medical device. I think you are. Are there mechanisms such as regulatory sandboxes or pre-market consultations that MDA is exploring to allow innovators to test AI medical devices in controlled environments? So tell us what's going on right now, apart from what you've mentioned in the past half an hour.
Okay. So we are actually exploring to propose a regulatory sandbox to address, I'm not sure, maybe AI or maybe a more wider innovative medical device. So at the moment we have communicating with various agencies locally and also internationally, so that we can get information, and from there we want to propose the best regulatory sandbox so that we can facilitate innovation. Not only that, we want to ensure that, because Malaysia actually have a lot of research, okay, going on, but whether it can complete up to the commercialization is another issue, right? So we want to facilitate that because we want to bring our innovation into not only local market as well as international market. And other than that, we also looking at to see whether we can have new post-market requirements, because we want to enhance our post-market implementation to address the AI, because as everybody mentioned that fast moving, okay, how can I say, it actually continuously improving, evolving, yes. So we want to have a proactive post-market surveillance so that we can monitor the performance of the AI medical device throughout its life cycle. As you mentioned, because our medical device comes from Western countries, so we want to see whether this medical device is actually perform as intended for our public. So we want to get those information, and then from there we can analyze all the information so that we can prevent if any incident occurs, or it can be a decision for us whether to allow those technologies to be in our market. Yeah.
Thank you, Puan Ida. So very interestingly, you mentioned what happens after, right, the post the period after the medical device has been sold. So we've looked at the safeguards which are in place before an AI device is deployed. What happens after deployment? That's the question. So AI medical devices don't stop evolving once they hit the market, right? Some continue to learn and adapt in real-world settings, introducing new types of risks that have not been present or were not present during testing of the device. So the real test for regulators may actually be what comes after deployment. The question, therefore, is are regulators keeping pace with the unique risks that AI poses in the day-to-day realities of R&D and post-market deployment? So the first question to Dr. Cho is, do you think regulators are keeping up with the AI-specific risks that R&D teams like yours face?
I wouldn't. Eager to answer the question. So I wouldn't call it keeping up per se. I would say it's more like a constant conversation, dialogue, and alignment on what the other parts are doing, so that we know what is at stake and we know what is coming up, right? I think that is what I would say. I mean, the sandbox would be a place. Say, for example, if you talk to a doctor and he told you that, okay, this software cannot read head and neck images reliably because they miss the nasopharyngeal cancer. You need to listen to them, right? And this is something that it's not like you would like to stop that software, but you need to put a limitation on it. And that is the post-market evaluation. But in general, the software is good, right? So this is something which I think the dialogue would need to be in place in a proper way. The users, the developers, the company, and
so it's a two-way communication.
Yeah. I think the users will need to be involved, especially when we are talking about the clinical applications, the demographics. Whether, say, for example, dietary changes affect the diseases like gastric cancer, right? All this stuff are really technical. I don't know it, but the doctors know it. They will tell you.
So I guess the monitoring that needs to be done is going to increase, right? So how many employees do you have in the MD? Maybe about 200, do you think? Existing. So very much like JPDP, our Jabatan Perlindungan Data Pribadi, our personal data department, they definitely need to ramp up. They've got 45 employees. They had 45 employees for the past 10 years, covering the whole of Malaysia. They need 200 to 300 employees. So it looks like because you have to keep an eye on all these AI devices, medical devices they're going to approve, once they are released in the market, you're going to need to increase your manpower.
Hopefully that happens.
So Elia, in your experience dealing with relevant stakeholders, so in your experience dealing with the relevant stakeholders across the jurisdictions, what can countries like Malaysia learn from early adopters of AI and medical devices, the regulatory frameworks when dealing with post-market surveillance?
Thank you for that. I'm apparently a bit more excited to answer this question, right? I think let's look back at the three markets that we were talking about earlier, the UK, US, and the EU. For example, I think in the UK and the US, they already use real-world performance monitoring and not just pre-approved tests, right? So they have that monitoring that is amped up and that two-way conversation that Dr. Idris was mentioning. And I think that's a good thing that we should take back. I mean, of course, we have to assess whether that can fit us in our current state and perhaps how we can move forward with that. When we take a look at, for example, the EU and the medical devices regulation there, they now expect to have periodic safety update reports, which is essentially the reporting element of submitting that, what is happening, what is the developments and updates. Because I think we need to be aware that, like we mentioned before, I think it's been quite stressed in this panel session, is that when we're dealing with this AI mechanisms, especially in medical devices, it's sort of a shifting and changing software. It's a changing algorithm, right? Because it changes based on what the data sets you feed it. So constantly keeping it up to date and constantly monitoring is very important. The next question, definitely to our regulators, would be how frequent do we have to have that discussion? Given that, is there better ways to do that? Perhaps it wouldn't be bi-monthly, or would it be bi-yearly of a discussion to have. And the last thing I think we have to consider is the implications on certain requirements, right? Like, for example, algorithm shift, whereby an algorithm would sort of change its initial development process, but also things like cybersecurity audits and whether we have to sort of merge all of these understandings from the data side to the cybersecurity side, and how we assess all of those aspects. So those are some things that we can take away as we observe from the other markets that have already done that, and then put our local twist, our local flavor.
So this reminds me of the discussions we had about cars, automobiles, right? That have AI that are powering them. So in terms of legal position, the liability is no longer with the driver of the car, because the car is making up its own mind. So then who bears responsibility? It may be the manufacturer. So if an insurance company wants to pay out, they have insured the person and they've not actually insured the manufacturer, but the manufacturer might be liable. So in the UK, I think they come up with a new scheme. So that new scheme that has been pushed out in the UK, you can expect that to happen here as well, and in different areas as well. So I think we are in for some, in inverted commas, interesting times. As Confucius said, you want to wish someone not well, right? You wish that he lives in interesting times. So I think we are heading to those. So is there anything you wish to add, Panida, about post-market surveillance?
Yeah, I will agree with Mr. Elia just now. In terms of having a stringent monitoring, proactive post-market monitoring system. But because those countries have the system already, and definitely the manufacturer have already reported to those authorities. So what Malaysia is doing, we are actually get them to share the information so that the manufacturer or the establishment don't have to do the same thing again to Malaysia. So other than monitor the information from the regulatory authority, we also share what is happening in Malaysia as well. So at the moment, our post-market surveillance is actually reactive, not really proactive. But once we get alert from the country, the authority from the country that the incident is occurred, then we will ask the representative to give us the investigation report, the mitigation, and so on. So that is currently what we are doing. So maybe we will revise that, whether the current post-market surveillance system is actually accommodating the AI medical device. Yep.
Thank you, Bonita. So moving on to the future. This is the last of the areas that we're going to cover. Elia, in your experience dealing with relevant stakeholders across various jurisdictions, what are the key regulatory pain points that may hinder innovation in AI medical devices in the future, in the forthcoming times?
I think we can split this into two different types of countries, right? So middle income countries, or MICs, and HICs, high income countries.
And we are?
We're on the way to high income countries. That's one of our aspirations for us, I think by 2030 to become a high income country. So coming back to that dual approach that I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to be cognizant of what are the issues that middle income countries face and high income countries face. Off the top of my head, for middle income countries, we have to look at infrastructure, right? As in, is there sufficient infrastructure to support more high capability AI medical devices? One of the initiatives that I think Malaysia currently is looking at is our electronic medical records. And we're in the midst of doing that process. But in other countries that might not be at that level or still have years to sort of catch up there, It is a concern on how to get high quality data that would be able to inform these localized issues and localized sort of cases like the doctor was mentioning just now. So that's one. I think secondly is on equity and this bias factor. And this is coming back to the fact that we need to ensure that a lot of this data that we are able to source and able to use is not just concentrated in one sort of demographic sector, right? It has to be urban, it has to be rural, Semenanjung, Sabah, Sarawak. This data has to sort of be sourced from different areas. In that case, we are able to avoid a little bit of bias when it comes to this process. When it comes to high-income countries, I think I'll just go back to that legal grey zone discussion that you were mentioning about how the question of liability, right? Who will be liable? And it's the age-old question of if you get your ChatGPT to do homework, for example, and fail, who's liable, right? But I think how the markets answer this is a bit different. When we look at FDA, they don't assign liability in the US. There isn't liability being assigned, they leave it up to the courts in talks. Whereas in the EU, there is a little bit more, from what I understand, liability being bared by manufacturers and deployers as they create that a bit more of a direct relationship to these AI medical devices. So those are some of the concerns for the middle-income countries and high-income countries.
So on that particular point, the EU did come down to Southeast Asia about two years ago to promote their version of AI, the AI Act, but specifically to Malaysia. But we did not take it up. We basically have gone with Singapore's approach, which is innovation friendly, and we'll see what happens. So, anything to add here? Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Cho, on the topic of innovation, where do you see AI in medical devices going in the next 5 to 10 years? What will be the next breakthrough areas, you think?
It's an exciting question. First, maybe I should follow up with what Elia said about the responsibility. I think in Singapore, we have a discussion about who should be responsible for the outcome of the AI report. So,
where is this discussion held?
In Singapore.
No,
in Singapore.
but in what forum?
It's an AI forum. AI forum. Yeah. That's what I talk about. I mean, the doctors and the inventors. So, I think it depends on how you use the AI report. So, in some places which I know, the AI report would be the only outcome from an examination. The doctors just sign off. In other cases, the doctors would review the report and sign off after the review. So the liabilities are completely different, right? So you have to think about it when we are talking about labeling the reports, right? So this is something which you need to think about. So now go back to the future, okay? If you look into AI and healthcare, the driver of AI is not healthcare. The driver of AI is more Google, OpenAI. They have other things in mind. AI in healthcare is more an application of AI models which are established. So from that sense, I would say AI has a very good use case in healthcare, but healthcare will not be strong enough to drive a specific development in AI to make it work for healthcare specifically. So we will see it as an application, a very good application of AI models. That's how I see it.
Can you give us an example?
Say for example, large language model. You don't come from healthcare, right?
Yes.
Even for, say, convolutional neural network, it starts with images. It doesn't start with medical images, right? And then people put in the medical images. So I don't think of any really innovative models from AI which are aimed specifically for healthcare and nothing else. Because the market is not as good as the financial market, right? You think about this and you will know that, but AI have an important role in healthcare. It would help improve the care, the delivery of care, operational efficiency. This is something which would help a lot in terms of the time where we are in. We have more and more people getting sick. because people get old, right? And then it would be useful in cases like the clinical decision support tools that you're talking about. I mean, in terms of diagnosis, it really reduces the manpower that we use. It probably would have a role in drug delivery, which is really data mining problem, and you need AI to help you. So this is what I would see the potential. I think the first two parts are already happening, depending on whether the hospital is open-minded, whether the doctors are acceptable or open to it. But the third thing is something which we still have to work on.
Thank you for that answer. It's also set my mind barreling down a particular direction. So I understand that there's nothing specific being developed by AI, when the medical device or health data is the driver, right? But AI is being used for providing dispensing advice. And bearing in mind the frequency of AI having hallucinations. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, essentially I asked ChatGPT, is there anything in our telecommunications law which talks about interception of communications? He very confidently told me, yes, there was, and it's in Chapter 12 of the Communications and Multimedia Act. I opened the Communications and Multimedia Act, there's no Chapter 12. It stops at Chapter 11. And I said, you misinformed me. Oh, I said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You need to refer to this particular chapter, this particular section. Then nothing as well. So, I mean, bearing in mind that incidents with law, I'm just wondering how much miscommunication there is when it comes to medical information.
That is also what I'm talking about generative AI. So the usual way that we use AI in healthcare is supervised learning. We have the reports that we can refer to. When we come to a large language model, we really need to be careful about the hallucination effect that you talk about. I saw it also. We had a lot about stories. Even the White House would have all this effect putting in the reports. So this is, I would say, something which we need scrutiny from the regulatory agencies. And we need to probably ask the manufacturers how this can be prevented or controlled, right? And I think the post-marketing monitoring to see if any adverse events come up, because we are talking about life and death. Yes. We are not talking about, sedation, right? So this is something which I think the if you approve it in the first place, and we will need to learn from EU, from UK, from Japan to see how they are going to regulate it. That would be very interesting.
Thank you for that. So, Puan Ida, so going back to one of the areas you touched on just now, going to 30,000 feet and then looking at what's happening around the world and regionally, what are Malaysia's plans, if you can answer, to position itself in the global AI medical device regulatory conversation? I know we are a global hub for testing, but is there anything else that you can share with the audience?
Because currently we are one of the member in the IMDRF, and we try to get into one of the working groups. One of it is AI medical device. So hopefully we can, give our insight, contribute to the development of the framework to address. So that is one of our, way forward, okay, in regulating medical device in Malaysia, and to cater the innovation, because AI and innovation is actually being, continuously discussed. So as mentioned by everybody, on the importance to have the regulatory sandbox. So that one also in our pipeline, we want to have a framework to collaborate with all stakeholders, okay, so that we can have our own regulatory sandbox specifically on the AI and also the innovation. So we want to be the first in our region, ASEAN region, to have that regulatory sandbox. So other than that is, the ongoing revising, reviewing our framework so that we will have the adaptive and flexible regulatory to cater these medical devices, AI medical devices, so that we ensure the safety and performance of those devices. Yeah.
Thank you, Puan. So a lot to look forward to, I guess. So thank you, panelists, for your answers and for sharing your insights with the audience. Like everything new is going to be a challenging time, full of twists and turns, false starts, good starts, right? And we see where we end up. But what's clear is that AI medical devices will have a fundamental effect on our lives, which cannot be avoided and should be encouraged in terms of innovation, responsible innovation, right? So before I move on into the question and answer portion of the session, I have a surprise question for the panelists. So answer in 30 seconds, keep it short and sweet, right? So to each of you, I'll start with Elia. To your mind, what is the biggest bottleneck holding back innovation in AI medical devices today, and how do we solve it?
Okay, 30 seconds starting now. I think just like with other sectors, there needs to be clear regulatory alliance and streamlining. We have to ensure that in this sector there isn't going to be a regulatory fragmentation, that the processes are in place and that there is a clear whole of ministry, whole of agency sort of approach from not just the ministries and agencies but also from the private sector as well as the public third parties. So that's, I think, one of the main things that we have to ensure that happens.
Thank you, Elia. And Dr. Chung.
I think the major hurdle or the challenge for AI in healthcare is deployment. You can build a model easily. I mean, a lot of people can do it, and then you can see a lot of papers out there describing various use cases of this. But how many cases or how many of these tools are really integrated into the clinical workflow and so improve the productivity and accuracy, which are beneficial to the patients on the ground? This is the bottleneck, because when we do the integration with a lot of challenges, it's not the technical, it's the infrastructure, it's the workflow, cybersecurity, connectivity, compatibility, all this stuff comes into play when we want to put something into the hospital. You don't just plug and play. That's how I see it. Framing is up, right?
And lastly, Puan Ida.
Because Mr. Elia has already giving answer on the regulatory hurdles. So to me, in terms of innovation, I see that there's a lacking of communication between the users, researchers, as well as the manufacturers. Because definitely we want to innovate, or we want to have a medical device that is benefit to the patient and convenient to the user to use. So these are the things that is lacking, because researcher can, come up whatever idea that they have, but whether that idea is actually applicable to the user to treat the patient and also the publics. So that is my answers.
Thank you, Puan Ida. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a panel discussion that we just had. We have moved very nicely to 4:40 now, I guess. So it leaves 20 minutes for questions and answers. So over to you.
Okay, so thank you to all our panelists and moderator for the insightful discussions. Now we'll open the floor for a short Q&A. Please feel free to raise your hand and do introduce yourself before your questions. Do we have questions?
Good evening. My name is Mohan. I'm from Subang Jaya. Okay, so as a user of artificial intelligence medical devices, I think there are a few things as a user itself. AI has already been a part of us for quite some time. I think we have all realized that healthcare definitely becomes a very crucial area. it's not only me. So, example, I've got two parts of the question, two parts of the scenario. So, one is the user perspective. So I use AI, and then I warrant, I understand a better deal about my health, especially with LLM models and all, Gen AI models and all, right? But then when I ask my doctors, I compete with my doctors as well. So those perspectives are also there on the user angle. But and somehow I'm also affiliated with the research fraternity within the Ministry of Health. So on that perspective, I tend to also see a lot of industry players coming into the picture. And most of them come in with the fact that saying that, oh, it has been already validated in other parts of the world. And on the regulatory perspective, it's back to data. It's about generalizing it into local perspective of the situation. So when it comes to the regulatory sandbox perspective, right? So data becomes the most important champion. Okay, so when we talk about artificial intelligence, it just evolves every day. Okay, so previously when we talk about image data itself, radiomics was actually one of the first one AI was built upon. Because there's tons of data there, tons of metadata which we can actually forecast or foresee in the perspective of diagnostic capacity. So now, beyond diagnostic, beyond screening, it goes into therapeutics, it goes into prognostication, right? So it alerts or identifies patients as well. So when it comes to generative AI, when you put EMR content into generative AI, it tends to flag patients at this era who are at risk, right? So, but then those data are probably 10 years ago, okay? So when it comes to data integrity perspective, I think that's something we are avoiding at this ground. So on the regulatory perspective, how does it flow? So who's going to give local available data to innovators or to local tech partners, right? In pursuing innovation as well. And also bear in mind, Ministry of Health, we are also the players on innovation as well. So I hope the panelists can advise me something on this one. Thank you.
Puan,
Yeah, I think this is one of the aspects that we are looking at too, because definitely data is not belong to anybody to be used, right? So we need to have some regulation to address that as well. And I think we need to have some consensus or agreement, in terms of using the data. Patient data is actually confidential, right? So we need to have sort of requirement to address this. I think this is one of the challenges for the researcher to come up with innovation by using the data. And it is one of the hurdles or one of the criteria that that limit or what I can say the agency that provide funding are actually considering whether they have some consents to use those data, and whether the data is actually reliable to be used to address whatever solution that they want to propose. So that is one area that I think globally looking into that. At the moment, I don't see any reference document to address this. Yeah. So I think we need to look at the the ownership of the data, the regulation that control that, and at the moment what we have is the PDPA, not the patient data. We only have the guidelines that we that been referred by our physicians. I'm not sure whether those guidelines we can upgrade it into our national guidelines or regulation. So that is my answer at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually able to contribute somewhat to the answer because I deal with personal data. I've been dealing with personal data since 1999. So in Malaysia, personal data, it falls under the PDPA, that's the Personal Data Protection Act, if it involves commercial use, right? So one solution is for it not to involve commercial use, for that information to be used for scientific purposes, where there's no commercial advantage to be gained. So that's one particular solution. But I don't think that's very feasible because everything at the end of the day comes down to who is funding, who is able to fund something and get paid for it, really, at the end of the day. But then there's another possible solution. So these solutions are being proposed just based on the knowledge of the law here. But what is in place overseas might be different. They may have considered it, they may have discounted it. And the thing is, the way we do things is we always follow what the others do, right? When we do something that is a bit different, we sometimes get into trouble. Trademark classes, I'm not too sure how many of you are familiar, there are 45 classes. Malaysia went and registered 46 class. And then we realized no one else was doing it, so we had to go back and revise the law. So that's an example of where we become too brave. We go where angels fear to tread. This other solution is basically anonymize the data. Yes. Obviously the data will relate to someone, but if you remove any mention of the person, remove identifying elements, I can look at a person, I won't know what his internal readings will be, right? That could be a solution. Anonymize the data and then all commercial elements are removed. And so that might be a solution to the question. Yes?
Just on that, when you say anonymized data, so when you talk about structured data anonymization, when you talk about image data. So about data itself, so when you talk about structured data, right, so anonymization is quite easy but done. But when you talk about image data, example, radiological images, so when you talk about DICOM images, you've got roughly about 2,000 over metadata imprinted in each pixels, right? So who quality controls this information? So those are the challenges actually we are finding as well. Because I'll give you instances what you find in the metadata of DICOM images. You find that where is the address, what's the patient's name, who's the procedure is, which machine it has been done, right? I think I've shared some of this familiarity with some of the people here as well. So I'm not too sure whether the Data Protection Act considers this part of it, because as more what do you call that, chunkier the machine gets, yeah, you get more information out of it.
So I don't doubt that the amount of information captured over the years is going to increase, and all of it will go back to where it was captured, who it was captured from, etc. But so there must be a process to anonymize that information and contribute it to the larger corpus, right? And utilize it for the purposes of healthcare. So that is a concept. As to how workable it is, I think there need to be discussions with the Jabatan Data Pribadi, with the Ministry of Digital, with MDA. So these things can be raised.
Also,
yes.
when regards to patient data, we go back to Act 586 under private healthcare, Akta Bawah MOH. So that covers the patient's data.
That gentleman was talking about image data, which we have been handling for the past 20 plus years. So DICOM data, DICOM files do contain a rich amount of personal information, down to the very details, if you want to. But they can all be taken out and keep the whole images without any personal information. So this is the first thing. But there are exceptions. There are rare diseases where when you see these images, you know where it comes from. And that is very sensitive. And you need to be careful about this even though you have the anonymization. So this is a special case, right? The third case is that when we have the data anonymized, maybe you can build a repository to keep them for good common use with all the data printed, with the PDPA or experts in the data privacy agency here in Malaysia collecting through it and share with the with researchers. The fourth thing is that data used for model building should be separated from data which was reported because of an error, adverse events. They have to be separately handled and evaluated. Do I make sense out of the...
Yes, it makes sense. But to add to that, number one, the minister can give exemptions if it involves particular individuals or particular data. So in certain circumstances, the minister can give an exemption. And the other is because it is for scientific research, it is for the benefit of humanity, the person can give consent as well, right? So these are options which are open to us. I hope the question we've answered your question as best as we can. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Idris from Puan. I'm a medical officer and also a researcher. My question mainly talks about the regulations, and I think we can learn a lot from AI Act from EU. There are a few things that was mentioned earlier on in the panel about sandbox and all, black box and all. So I think in building the regulation, there are a few things that we need to consider. One is the act, the possibility of patient to challenge the diagnosis made the AI. One, two is for the clinician to understand how the diagnosis come to. This is pertaining to diagnostic AI. So two, we see in EU and UK there's a lot of NGO or more busybody people like to ask questions about. But in Malaysia we're very shy. We don't have watchdog to whistleblower on things. Like for example, I think the cases of HR using AI. So people of I think not to show the AI also start raising alarm. The AI system now biased towards certain population. But in Malaysia we don't have that kind of culture. So would the regulation, I think, may want to address those kind of things as well. Just like for example, if we start deploying AI to the rest of the clinics and all, what happens if the AI start creating hallucination and bias and we don't realize it? 10 years along the line, then only we realize that there's harm which is related to this process. So I think we need to start advocating our public. This postdoc concept is something that we may want to start, be more busybody than before this.
Yeah, thank you for that sharing. Is anyone on the panel who wants to contribute?
Hi, yep. So I agree with that. I think very valid points that were made, and especially on this watchdog narrative. I think one of the important things, and it's sort of a growing understanding, not just in Malaysia, but across the Southeast Asian markets, that we need to have the strength of our third sector being bolstered, that can keep that level of accountability between government and public and private players. I mean, it's also in our AI ethical guidelines that we passed out in Malaysia for a tripartite system, if I'm not mistaken, right? Government, companies, the public private players, as well as the third party, which includes academia and also NGOs and CSOs. We are seeing a growth in NGOs and CSOs. However, when it comes to maybe this realm, there isn't a lot of target focus or scrutiny, as you may mention. But I think those are very valid concerns. And it comes back to, number one, the fact that we've acknowledged we need to have that step-by-step monitoring on these AI medical products, but secondly, on that trust factor to ensure that there aren't any potential ramifications from, for example, hallucinations.
Thank you. So on the points raised, I can't contribute much, but I can talk about, one thing I can talk about is the Malaysian shyness. So I went to Singapore to meet with Google, together with my colleagues from many different countries. and there was one big meeting room for everyone, and we met with them, and then there was one separate group for the guys from India, not Indians, Indian citizens. These are all lawyers, because the Indian lawyers are extremely aggressive, so it's a question of culture. That's one. Number two, in challenging diagnosis, yes, under the PDPA you can challenge decisions which have been arrived at by data controllers, data users, where you as a data subject disagree. So you can mount a challenge, ask them why, and if they still don't change their mind, your own disagreement will have to be factored in or featured in that particular information. So there is a process for it in Malaysia. So I'm sure that for AI that can also be featured in as well. Right. Anything else? Yes. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Harun. I'm dedicating this question to Mr. Dr. Chung. Focusing 15 years from now, the reality of autonomous surgery. The reality of autonomous surgery. AI, digital twin, and robotics. How is it this balancing innovations and safety to the patient?
So let me address it step by step. I think digital twin is coming. The way that it's going to be used needs to be seen, but I think people see the potential of it. What I saw, I talked about the three applications are more the mainstream applications. Digital twin is coming. Yeah. The second one is the robotic surgery. I'm not sure about the latest development here and whether or how much AI that they use nowadays, because that would affect the progress or the application of it in the clinical scenario. And the third thing is,
the combination of these three segments, I think will play the role, AI, digital twin, and robotics as autonomous surgery.
Yeah, so robotics,
the balancing of the
robotics is more to do with it's like the auto-driving cars, which will take a longer time to mature to make an impact on the patient management, I would say. The digital twin would come earlier. The reason is that it's kind of like a prediction model. You have you can model the treatment to see whether this treatment will work for this patient. So this is more coming because the need of us to predict what is coming up.
Siemens are working on this journey and they're prepared?
Siemens is working on a digital twin for sure. We are not in the robotic arm or robotic surgery yet, if I understand it correctly. Yeah. But I think just want to make sure that in terms of AI, again, there are two kinds of two ways of doing models, with supervised learning and without supervised learning. The risks are different. When we talk about hallucination, all this stuff is about unsupervised learning. So when we want to get the trust of the patients, we probably need to tell them what is being used, whether it's a generative AI or whether it's not a generative AI but a supervised learning, where we have a good handle of it. Mathematical models are established.
Thank you, Dr. Cho.
Thank you. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we can't take too much questions. So is it okay if we wrap up the Q&A session? Okay. Alright, thank you to panelists and moderator. You guys may go back to your seats. Can we have my team from Futurise?